Well, hey, good morning. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning political news show for Indiana. Our opening theme song is by Hoosier singer-songwriter Leslie Nuss, and my name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. This week, a celebration for the ages, centuries in the making. It's the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce wedding at Madison Square Garden in New York. No, of course, I'm talking about the 250th anniversary of our country's founding. Reflections on America's semi-quincentennial later in the show, but first, in addition to exploding fireworks, the climate crisis bursts into full view, rockets' red glare threatened peace talks with Iran, or the ramparts we watch for rulings handed down by the Supreme Court. All of that, and plenty of Indiana stories sprinkled throughout, plus a whole lot more. But before we begin, you know the drill. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We certainly don't have billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And if a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you right now, that's okay. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. Get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making the state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. That is HOOS Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Now, let's welcome this week's guests. A couple of newcomers here on the Sunday show. First, she's the Democratic nominee for Indiana's 31st State House District. It is Katie Robbins. Katie, welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
So glad we finally get to have you here on one of the Sunday shows. And hey, we get a twofer. We're going to see you this Tuesday night on the podcast for a solo interview. Looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And joining us, not the first time here in the Who's Left universe, but the first time here on the Sunday show, the executive director at LGBTQ plus advocacy organization Equality Indiana. Let us welcome David Caudill.
Hey,
David,
how's it going?
welcome.
I thought I saw a couple red carpet pictures of you, Scott, there in Madison Square Gardens from Friday night at that shindig thrown by Mr. and Mrs. Swift.
I must have a doppelganger somewhere because I assure you, I was here in Indiana the whole time. I don't get invited to shindigs like that. So, listen, a lot here in the news that we got to talk about this week, and let us start. So, summer, as you know, is only a couple weeks old, and yet it is a hot one, like 7 inches from the midday sun. Last week, a record-breaking heat wave plagued Europe with temperatures well over 100 degrees or whatever that is in Celsius, buckling roads, damaging train tracks, and causing at least 3,700 excess deaths on the continent. The heat wave broke all-time temperature records in Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Hungary, sparking wildfires in forests still contaminated by unexploded World War II era ordnance in Germany. I didn't know that was still a thing. And then this week, a heat dome settled over much of the continental United States, sending thermometers into triple digits in New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, canceling several Independence Day events. Heat indexes topped 110 degrees in Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois, and here in Indiana. And events like these would be nearly impossible without climate change. Scientists say heat waves like this would have been impossible in the climate of 50 years ago and still exceedingly rare as recently as 2003. And of course, climate change is a product of humans burning fossil fuels at industrial scale for the last 200 years, and even with its deadly effects staring us right in the face, we continue to double down. A federal court ruled the Trump administration does not have to reinstate information pertaining to immigration, history, and climate at national parks. Stick a pin in that. We'll talk about it later. Canada announced plans for a 1,200-kilometer oil pipeline from the Alberta tar sands to the Pacific coast. Power consumption is higher than ever. The largest U.S. grid operator ordering emergency curbs on Friday under strain from, ironically, heat-driven AC demand and by energy-hungry AI data centers, more of which continue to come online all the time. And here in Indiana, the Metropolitan Development Commission of Indianapolis overrode the wishes of residents calling for a moratorium in voting to recommend special zoning rules for data centers to the full city county council. Katie, thoughts? Did you have to go outside in this at all this week? And you're much younger than us old. You've probably kind of grown up with all this your whole life, but man, it did not used to be like this.
It's sweltering. Like, it is miserable. I went to my city. We had like a 4th of July thing, and I went to that, and I told my mom, I said, I'm not going before 8:00. It is too damn hot outside. Like, it was just miserable. I can't even, my son loves to play outside, and he doesn't want to go because it's so hot. It's hard to breathe. It's hard to do anything. And I had to work yesterday, and it was miserable even in the building.
And David, what about you? I mean, this did not used to be this way. The scientists said these kind of heat waves, like 110 degrees in Europe, were impossible 50 years ago, and even 20, 25 years ago, nearly impossible. And yet now this is, once in a generation, seems to be yearly.
Right. And yes, from the dinosaur perspective, when I used to hang out with Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, it used to be much cooler. And there's still, unfortunately, a lot of elected officials who are making decisions that, I'm going to bring up this term a lot during this our 2 hours today, but they have flat earthers syndrome, where they are still confused that between weather and climate. I've sat in the same room with people who say, well, look, it's not, like the senator, decades ago on the Senate floor, who brought in a snowball and said, look, there's no earth warming going on because there's still snow on the ground, and I could bring in again, they're confusing weather with climate, and so we can have a little earth science lesson now. Weather, what happens every single day. Climate is the accumulation of what happens over time, and we used to be able to plant certain crops that last longer in Indiana, but now because of droughts, because of heat, because of the climate changing, because it used to be one way, now it's a different way, and this may be our new norms of it being warmer and warmer. And of course, we keep, as you've already demonstrated, raising the temperature on what the new norm is. We don't know if our farmers, which is a major employer and a major source of revenue for the state of Indiana, whether or not they're going to be able to continue to survive. So that's going to eventually have a problem for revenue in the state and around the world, because this is not just impacting Indiana, the United States, but as we're seeing, because of elected officials who still think burning fossil fuels is the cool thing to do. Yes, it used to be, when they used to think the earth was flat, but it's no longer flat. We know that. Well, using those types of fuels to run our air conditioning, to run the computer technology we need to do those things that are the tools that we need to find a better way to produce the power for that. And we know what exists out there, but these flat earthers that keep getting elected keep saying, no, we must use oil and coal and these these fuels, and there's clean coal, which we know is an industry myth, to try to convince people to say it's okay to use clean coal. That's like, using the term, not so bad botulism. It's not that bad, but and I'm kind of stealing a few of those ideas from. I'm a big West Wing fan, and I watched it back when it was originally on, and I still watch it. And those were arguments that they were having on the West Wing when that show was produced over 20 years ago. We're still having these
30
arguments.
years ago.
So go ahead. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then we're doubling down on it. It's like as the climate changes and you get these heat waves across the world, across the northern hemisphere, at least this time of year, it drives AC demand, and as such, then we're having to use more energy to power all this AC and burn more fossil fuels to get this energy, and we're like going into this sort of death spiral thing, and we're doubling down on it. The Canadians, the smart, considerate, science respecting Canadians are doubling down on fossil fuels and building this pipeline from Alberta out to the Pacific coast. And then the data center thing, Katie, we're building these things all willy-nilly. In Virginia, that's where this big major grid operator on the East Coast and the most populated population centers in the country put these energy curbs in place on Friday. A lot of that is because Virginia, like Indiana, is a huge hub for this data center growth, and we're building more and more of those. Like, how do we pull out of this thing? We should be pulling back on fossil fuels, and we're doubling and tripling down.
I think a lot of the problem is there are people who just refuse to believe science in elected office, and you can tell them 150 times over and over again, the data is there, climate change is real, and they will still look at you dead in the face and say, it's a hoax, it's not real. And it's like, it was 80 degrees on Halloween last year. Like, what do you mean? It's the climate is changing, and scientists are scientists. Like, we're not all experts at everything. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of it is you just have to get those people out of office. And I think we need a statewide moratorium, to be honest.
100%.
If we can't get a federal one, a statewide moratorium, because it's awful.
Let me ask you about that. Is that a priority? If
Yes.
you make it to office in November, it's one thing I see, and maybe you can attest to this. Have you been out talking to voters? This thing cuts across party lines. Republican, Democrat, nobody wants these things in their neighborhood.
They don't. And honestly, living in Grant County, it is such it's like half city, half town, half rural area. And there are at least 3 of them that have been like chattered around that we've heard about or that might come. And it's like, there's not a single person that is saying, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get the data center here. And so it does. It cuts across party lines. Like, people don't really care at the end of the day if you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're anti-data center. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and David, you're right there in the city, right? You've got a bunch of these going up. What do you think about the Metropolitan Development Commission ignoring the voters? Ignoring all the, another packed room there. You see this in the city all the time these days. It seems like there's another one of these hearings every week or so. And the elected officials or the appointed officials in these rooms hear folks' complaints and then just ignore them.
Well, and this comes to the governance of both the state as well as the city. I mean, state government has opened the coffers to allow businesses that can give a lot of money to elected officials to look the other way as they bring their business in. They love it when big business comes in, is willing to spend money and get those tax breaks, first of all, abatements, and so that attracts them to states like Indiana, Virginia, when they were, they've been run by extremists, but now they're back to sane governance in Virginia, because I think it's crazy in Virginia. I used to live there. Every 4 years, a governor can only run for 4 years. So every 4 years, it seems like they're electing either a Democrat or Republican, and the legislature seems to be going the same way. So that's crazy. But we're even crazier here, where we've had 20 plus years of governance by extremists, and Mitch Daniels. He wasn't quite so extreme, but kind of long for those days. You know what I mean? But now it's insane that the legislature has opened the door for these businesses to come in. They're not producing a lot of new jobs. Originally, this is also the tension in the Democratic Party, where yes, they're saying, oh, we're going to use union jobs. So that kind of divides. That's a wedge issue. They use union jobs, but once they build it, there's not going to be any new union jobs created. Yes, they're going to provide work for the construction workers, but there's not going to be any blue collar jobs afterwards that are going to be. They just aren't. There's going to be people who come in and make sure they correct problems that may happen in these CPUs, but these are people with computer science degrees. These are not average working jobs. These are not average Hoosiers getting employed. So yes, here in Marion County, of course, those appointed officials, people don't understand how government works. If these are appointed officials on the Metropolitan Development Commission, we need to, I think, ordinary voters need to pay better attention to who's being appointed to those commissions that are making decisions. Of course, now it goes to the elected body of the city county council, and we have, there's going to be election next year. So the lobbyists for these data firms are calling up people who support some of these candidates that are going to be running for re-election and saying, hey, what can we do fundraising wise to make sure you win re-election? And I know that, one candidate, one Democrat on there, Mr. Gibson, who I've known for 20 some years, he's a supporter of a data center that's going in his district. I think he's already drawn an opponent in the primary. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch next year when I don't know if he's even running for re-election or not, but why he pivoted to support this, and he's one of the few vocal supporters. There's probably other supporters on the council, but most of them are, have been quiet. Those that are opposed to it are very vocal. But they're also, they're taking the temperature in their district of not just the climate, but taking the temperature of their voters, of the people who are making noise on social media. And again, a lot of this is on social media because, we don't have mass media like the newspaper, like the Indy Star, or the television stations that are local. They rarely give a crap about these. I'm sorry about saying crap on Sunday morning, but about this stuff. They're covering national news and things on the state level, but these local neighborhood issues just don't get the coverage because big businesses come in and put all those local things out of business. I mean, we're grateful to this podcast for bringing a perspective that has been missing in the conversation in Indiana. So I'm glad you brought this topic up. The voices from these neighborhoods, and it's just not happening here in Indianapolis. Of course, we have lots of neighborhoods, but in Grant County, there in Marion, if they open the door to potentially bringing in data centers, or like in Maryville, where we may get to that conversation about using property for ICE. Again, the federal government, I would consider that a big business coming in with lots of money, because the big, beautiful, crazy ass bill that was passed last year is giving so much money to Homeland Security and to build these prisons when they're not supposed to be prisons. These are people who are here, and that's another conversation we can get into, and I'm getting off the point. But the point is, people are expressing themselves. Nobody is covering it. There are concerns. I think we need to put an infrastructure of healthy energy in place first. Solar, wind, I don't want to say nuclear, but we know in Indiana they did pass a law last year allowing for the potential of these mini nuclear reactions to go. I don't know how that's connected to nuclear families that the governor talked about last month, and we'll get into that later. That's another great conversation I'd love to have. But we need to put that infrastructure in place before we consider bringing in these energy sponges, which are what these AI centers are. They're going to suck the energy in, and of course, the privatization that happened 50, 40 years ago of our utilities means they want to make money. So guess who? It's not the data center that's going to pay for that. It's going to be average Joes and Josephines that are going to pay for that.
It's the utilities. It's these data center companies. That, these are the corporations that own our elected officials. And hey, we'll talk about corruption later in the show too. But let's move on. You mentioned the extremists in charge of our government for the last 25 years. Let's stay local and talk about one of said extremists, and that's Governor Mike Braun. Several stories out of the governor's office this week, and one of the many complaints about data centers is the energy demand that drives up utility prices for regular Hoosiers. Now, the week before last, the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission approved a rate hike by AES, the electric monopoly in your neck of the woods there, David. And Governor Mike Braun, who occasionally cosplays like he gives a damn about these things, responded by demoting IURC Chairman Andy Zay, who he had just appointed months prior. Now, this week, another commissioner, David Valletta, announced his resignation. So a little over 6 months after appointing 3 of the 5 commissioners, Braun will appoint a 4th. Speaking of new gubernatorial appointees, Braun this week appointed 3 new trustees to the Indiana University Board. All 3 are current or former CEOs. Recall, state lawmakers last year gave the governor the power to appoint all 9 members of the IU Board of Trustees. Formerly alumni elected 3 members. Due to this, as well as a rash of changes at the state's flagship school, including the dismantling of DEI programs and protections for marginalized students, faculty, and staff, erosion of free speech, and the stifling of dissent, a 9-year board member of the IU Foundation Board announced his resignation this week. And I've got more out of the governor's office, but I guess I want to pause there and hear from Katie. So 2 things, we've got the governor basically has stacked the IU or the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. Mm-hmm. He will have appointed 4 out of the 5 members now. The other guy, the 5th, he's been there since like 1990. Like,
wow.
find another gig, my guy. Let somebody else keep
isn't it time to retire?
But also, now he's also fully stacked the IU Board of Trustees. This is the governor kind of single-handedly putting his stamp on the whole of government and magnifying everything. And you can see folks in the at the IU Foundation, which is sort of not an official IU body, but sort of a part of their like fundraising mechanism. Hard to describe. I know people that work there, but they're like, I don't like the path the university is going down. They've lost a lot of academic freedom. I can't in good conscience stick around here. So what do you think about Braun putting his sycophants throughout all of government, including the state's university system?
He gives me whiplash. It's so hard to even keep up with some of the stuff he's doing, and he's not doing anything. That's the sad part. He's not doing what he was actually put there to do. He is too busy just making it making it his own little mini MAGAverse in the entire state of Indiana. He is quite literally the worst governor ever. I have nothing but disdain for Mike Braun. And the thing is, we knew he was going to do this. The legislature passed it. We knew he was going to do this. And he's just mad that they approved a rate hike and then tries to act like he cares about affordability for people. It's like, dude, you literally built a helicopter. You put a helicopter pad in your backyard. You don't live the same life everyday people do. And so
you don't have one? I got one.
No, I don't. I didn't get it.
You
And my
got to
tax
New
return
York
didn't
to
hit.
see the Swifts get married is with your
That's
helicopter.
how he did it.
That's how he did it. See, he's
How he
already
did it.
playing it off. No, I really can't get there. It's a doppelganger. No, you took your helicopter, Scott.
It was your helicopter.
Yeah, you nailed me. So, more out of the governor's office, as I mentioned. So this week he extended the state's gas tax holiday for a fourth time. This is the last 30-day extension he can order without legislative approval. Every month that passes without collecting gas taxes costs the state's roads and bridges $140 million. Though the governor did also announce this week he will, quote, make good on local government's losses from the suspension. Worth noting, the State Board of Finance still needs to approve the proposal, and localities won't see the reimbursements until November, well after the end of construction season. But the biggest story out of the governor's office this week is probably this from the Indiana Capital Chronicle. Over half of the 33 employees reporting to Braun's office are paid by other state agencies. 2.3 of the $3.9 million in total salaries, or some 58%. Now, the administration calls this, quote, historical practice going back decades, but some of the arrangements raise eyebrows. A governor's office spokesman is paid by the Family and Social Security Administration. An executive assistant and spokeswoman are paid by the BMV, the latter earning more than the BMV's own spokesman. And a senior policy advisor is paid by the Department of Transportation at $180,000 more than INDOT's commissioner makes. The most striking case, perhaps, is that of former DCS director Adam Krupp, who spent over 3 months on medical leave, returned in April as a special advisor to the governor in a role created specifically for him, still drawing $210,000 from DCS, the highest salary in that agency, matching that of the new DCS director. David, now, the governor says this is like long-standing practice, but it sounds like he's borrowing money allocated to these very important state agencies, right? DCS, taking care of the kids. Department of Transportation, necessary, having some problems they're going to have to deal with in terms of funding right now. The BMV, others, Social Security Administration. He's borrowing money from them to pay for political appointees. Sounds corrupt to me. I don't know, man.
Well, it is flat out just very similar to what we see on the federal level with the current administration, where first of all they say, well, if it's always been done that way before, I'm going to do it. Well, just because it's always been that way, I've always approached when I've worked in government before, and I've worked in state government and city government. Just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean you continue to do it. It doesn't make it ethical. It doesn't make it not corrupt. And these practices are, my understanding, the legislature, and somebody running for the legislature, you would agree with me, Katie, that they pass a budget that says you're supposed to be using this money for the services in that division, and not taking the money from that division and using it to pay the salaries of people in the governor's office, in the executive branch. Even though those are executive offices, that money's supposed to be for there. I mean, like I said, we've seen this with Trump and him taking money and paying other things with it, whether that's, like I said, ethical or legal, or it's definitely corrupt. And just because it's been done in previous administrations, it means the legislature should be setting their hair on fire and saying, that's not why we passed this budget. If you want those people to get paid, you need to present to us a budget that this person in the governor's office is going to get paid this amount so we can approve that. But they don't want to do that because they don't see the commercials when he runs for re-election in 2 years of him saying he increased his personnel budget, blah, 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 by 203,000% or whatever the amount's going to be. So he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be able to say, I cut the budget for all of these agencies. Well, now they don't provide any services. They're only paying the salaries of the people who are working in your office and doing what you want them to do. They're sycophants. So why should we have budgets in the first place then, is what it comes down to. And I think those that are running, that are progressive and liberal, and hopefully they're all listening right here, they need to use this story and do some good campaigning with it, because pretty much if the legislature isn't going to speak up about this, the current legislature, they should
Yeah.
be fired, which is how you get elected, is by presenting an argument to your constituents why the person you're running against should be fired. Well, this is one of, a long laundry list of reasons, but you also need to be bumper sticker messaging short. And that's where I think liberals and progressives fall short, is doing that great messaging that it's the economy, stupid. Well, right here, it's corruption, stupid. That's what they should be running on right here. It's corruption, stupid. Our legislature's corrupt, as well as the governor is corrupt, and they're all a bunch of sycophants. And there's even more going to come from Washington, because they fired in their primaries 5 state senators, and those people who could be replacing them are sycophants to the president. So you don't think the problems in Washington are going to come right here to Indiana? Well, there's 5 potential state senators that are holding onto the coattails of the DC. So right there, the state senators that are running against those MAGA state senator candidates, they should be saying it's Washington, D.C. corruption coming right here home to Indiana. Let's not hire those clowns. Let's do things that average Hoosiers need done, which is paying attention to the affordability of kitchen table issues.
Hopefully that Trump endorsement is a kiss of death come November. Let's zoom out, and we talked about Braun and the gas tax, and of course the reason for his repeated waivers on the state's gas tax is the now on pause maybe war in Iran. Last Sunday, negotiations to end the conflict were under threat as the sides once again exchanged fire. Recall, Iran fired at ships using an unapproved route through the Strait of Hormuz, prompting U.S. strikes on Iranian sites, and then further drone and missile attacks on Bahrain and Kuwait from the Islamic Republic. And then Israel shelled a village in southern Syria. We often forget that in addition to ongoing operations in Gaza and Lebanon and increased settler incursions in the West Bank, that Israel has been occupying parts of Syria since December of 2024. President Trump earlier this week actually suggested Syria should invade Lebanon, saying Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa would do a better job rooting out Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah than Israel has done, though the Syrians ruled out any such idea on a visit by their foreign minister to Beirut. Israel has been a roadblock to peace since the beginning of this conflict, repeatedly violating ceasefires at critical junctures. So it was no surprise to also find out this week that U.S. officials learned Israel was planning to assassinate Iran's chief negotiators, prompting the Trump administration to warn the Iranians through intermediaries. You know you've gone too far if you've got the Trump administration warning the Iranians that the Israelis are about to assassinate your guys. Despite all this, peace negotiations between the U.S. and Iran did continue this week in Qatar, mediated by Pakistani diplomats. The Strait of Hormuz remains a sticking point even as shipping traffic is slowly recovering. One container ship ran aground using the non-approved U.S.-backed route, while Iran and Oman proposed a plan to levy fees for passage. Not tolls, but navigational, administrative, and environmental charges. Katie, I don't know. Sounds like tolls to me. And this whole war, or whatever you want to call it, we will find ourselves in a worse place than we were when this thing started at the end of February. World Cup's going on right now. This total own goal.
Yeah, I mean, people voted for Donald Trump because he was the no wars, the peace president. He was the no new wars. And this, he doesn't even call it a war. He's like, it's an excursion. It's a skirmish. And I'm just like, you literally blew up a girls' school. Like, what do you mean? Like, you guys literally blew up a school. Like, it is so, that is also exhausting, because every other day, it's something different. You know what I mean? We're doing talks. We're not doing talks. We're doing talks. We're not doing talks. And then it's just like, leave them alone. Just leave these people alone. You're not doing anything to help them. So it's like, they're like, well, we got to free the Iranian people from the Islamic Republic. And I'm like, what you're doing isn't going to do anything, though. What you're doing is not going to fix that. And
you get that circle the wagon effect, you know?
Yeah, it's not going to fix it. And so, and also, I mean, Israel is just so horrible. It is so horrible. And it's just constant, more ground offenses, more things that they are doing. They have already literally displaced millions of Palestinians for the past however many years. And now they're invading Lebanon, invading Syria, and it's
and you wonder who's in charge here, right? Who's client state?
Didn't Bill Clinton say, I think they forget who's the fucking superpower or whatever? Didn't he say something like that?
I do not recall that one, but I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, listen, Benjamin Netanyahu has been looking for an American president stupid enough to do his bidding for the last 40 years, and he finally found one in the form of Donald Trump. David, I don't know. What's going to come of this? Are these negotiations going to pan out? I don't think we're going to wind up in a better spot than we were in February. But at this point, I mean, the global oil reserves are running down. The shipping through the strait is increasing, but it's still nowhere near where it was just months ago. The economy is teetering, and I think we're all sort of pretending that it's not happening.
Well, I had to take a quick break there because I had to replace my eyeballs because they were rolling too much. With all of this, rinse and repeat. Let me to try to answer your question. It does involve Israel. When I speak of Israel and I criticize, and I think the two of you are the same, and so many other progressives are saying, we're criticizing their leadership and their military. We're not criticizing Israeli people. They are peace-loving people. They don't want these wars to be going on themselves. We are not anti-Semitic when we say we are criticizing the decisions of the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the sycophants that follow him, and their government and their spy agencies, which are still trying to make up for the fact that they blew it back in 2023 in October when they were attacked. They are now overcorrecting by saying we need to go after, destroy completely Gaza and get rid of Hamas. And we need to go and get, everybody in Lebanon who may be related to terrorists there. And of course, persuading Trump to say, okay, let's go into Iran like they did. Again, this is not the Israeli people. That's not who our beef is with. The ordinary citizens in Israel, they don't make these terrible decisions that are being made by the government, by their military, by their, like I said, their spy agencies. They are the ones that are committing genocide, not the Israeli people. And I want to be clear on that, because every time somebody criticizes them in America, you have extremists and Israelis, the government, saying, "Well, that person must be an anti-Semite." They're equating our criticism of their decisions to Nazism, which is a crazy equation, but that's how they can defend that anybody that criticizes us must be anti-Semitic and must hate Jewish people. They believe those, and we are not. I want the best for everyone in Israel, and there are wonderful people there, and those that I've met from the Middle East, and I've met quite a few. I used to be a Lyft driver here in Indiana, in Indianapolis, and when we had people from out of the country, because they're in the back seat talking their language, I used to stop and say, "What language is that? That just sounds beautiful. Where are you from?" I want to strike up a conversation and say, "How is your visit? You living here? How do you?" For the most part, it's okay, they say. But I want to tell them, say that not, there's some people in Indiana, some people in our country who will criticize you because you're speaking your own language and you're not acting the same. But I love the cultural diversity that we attract. And I'm getting off base here of your question, but this mess is exactly what you said. Benjamin Netanyahu finally found a president they could convince to do the dirty work that they needed done with going after Iran, because they could not do that by themselves. They're wanting regime change, and the ironic thing, the Trump administration and J.D. Vance or Richard Nixon, I forget who we have actually doing the negotiating there, since J.D. Vance says he's so much like Richard Nixon. Oh my gosh, that's even scarier. We never thought Richard Nixon was going to be a bad character, but now look who we have running our country. But they're actually going to negotiate into an agreement that is almost mirror image to what Obama had in place when Obama and the European Union came up with agreements for Iran to scale back their nuclear technology. It's almost going to be the exact same thing. Right.
That's
it's
the
almost
best they're going to get, and I don't think they've got the negotiating chops to pull that off. I mean, you got Kushner and Witkoff and Vance and a bunch of other clowns there doing the negotiating for us. So you mentioned the folks visiting our country and speaking a language that's not English, God forbid. Let's sort of talk about something along those lines here, and we got to talk about immigration, of course, and these incursions, as it were, in foreign countries inevitably result in humanitarian crises that drive immigration out of the global south to places like Europe and the United States. And, examples include, say, decades, if not centuries, of U.S. interference in Haiti and the destabilization of Syria in just the last 15 years. And on last week's show, we talked about the Supreme Court allowing the Trump administration to revoke temporary protected status for some 6,000 Syrians and 350,000 Haitians living in the U.S., despite their home countries being in no shape to return to. Now, this week, DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullins said they need to apply for permanent status or leave, offering $2,000 in a plane ticket back to countries the State Department's own travel advisory warns people not to visit. Several Republicans, including Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, broke with the decision. But in our state, no such humanity from Republican leadership. Attorney General Todd Rokita this week sending a cease and desist letter warning to the city of Maryville not to oppose a planned ICE detention facility there. Even as the Northwest Indiana town recovers from a tornado just 3 weeks ago, Rokita threatened legal action unless Maryville rescinds a January resolution opposing such a facility. One small bit of good news, though, here in Monroe County, a circuit court judge granted a preliminary injunction to Sheriff Ruben Marte, blocking enforcement of the state's quote-unquote Fairness Act and its ICE detainer mandate, though that injunction does only apply here in Monroe County. Our sheriff says, hey, listen, this ICE detainer request that the state is making us do now actually violates people's constitutional rights. I don't want to be put in that position. So at least here in Monroe County, that detainer request will be waived for now. There will be much more court action on this for certain. But Katie, I want to get your thoughts on Markwayne Mullins telling these people, essentially go back where you came from, right? Where when the United States destabilized where they came from.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that should be like we should want to help the people that are from Syria or Haiti, because like you said, we are the ones who had a hand in that. Like, we are the ones who had a hand in destabilizing their countries and making it unlivable. And it baffles my mind that they say it they say it so seriously. They're like, you have to go back. We'll give you $2,000 in a plane ticket. And what's that going to do for them? Like, they're going home to just horrible conditions. And also, they're human beings. They're human beings. And they are other people that deserve to be treated, deserve to be treated well and with respect and with dignity, just like how we all would want to be treated. And our government just has no ability to do that. No ability to do that. They have no ability to have any humanity, any morals, any decency. It's so unfortunate.
And a lot of these folks, right? They've been here. They've established themselves here. They have kids here, kids who are U.S. citizens, and now we
They have
want to send
jobs.
them back, right? And yeah, to that point, David, like it's shooting ourselves in the foot, making these people leave. There are whole cities whose economies have been revived by their immigrant communities. And you know, one of them is that in Springfield, Ohio. That's the one, J.D. Vance with the cats and dogs and all that nonsense about that. And that's why you've got Ohio Governor Mike DeWine saying, "Hey, cut it out. You know, these people are established members of our state now. They're helping our economy." And then you've got a clown like Rokita with no humanity, and this man has the gall to call himself a Christian. David, go off.
TPS is another program in our immigration policies in this country that is so broken. We need to throw the entire immigration law in the Potomac, start over again. And yes, we need to have that TPS when going back to, I think it was Reagan who talked about we're the shining example on the hill as a country. We and our humanitarian needs to, of course, it's ironic that Reagan said that because he also overlooked the AIDS crisis. But when it comes to humanitarian needs of countries that are at war or have earthquakes, like, you know, in Venezuela just this past week or 2 weeks ago, we are the wealthiest country in the world, and people want to come here and build their lives here. And we need an immigration system to not only give that temporary protection for people when there are problems in their countries, whether it's war, whether it's our lack of involvement in Haiti, that we should be there to help them solve their problems and not leave it up to the mafia and gangs and everybody else who's running things down there. I mean, the Monroe Doctrine also says we should be fixing problems in the state, not just telling other countries of the other side of the world, don't come in here and interfere. We need to be interfering and having interactions in our own hemisphere if we're going to truly follow the Monroe Doctrine or the Trump Doctrine, whatever it's called now. But
if we were interfering for good, that'd be one thing. But we
that's
interfere,
right.
we go down there and we extract resources and displace people. And
exactly.
And, yeah.
So our foreign policy shouldn't be connected with our humanitarian needs. And right now, it's just so kosher for anyone who's a MAGA person to be anti-immigrant, even if it, you know, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, which is what they're doing. And of course, the governor of Ohio, you know, he has no credibility. He doesn't have to run for anything again. So they always say he's not credible. There's going to be, what's his face, going to be the new Ohio governor there, the guy who ran for president, who's a billionaire.
Ramaswamy? I don't think he's going to win. I don't think
so either, but that's, you know, that's the presumed person that's going to be there. So TPS, the whole thing, and of course our attorney general who's running for governor is going to try to put himself in the news whenever possible by sending this letter up to Maryville, even though they haven't done anything to violate any laws. In fact, they said, you know, it was just an expression. I mean, it wasn't an ordinance that was passed; it was a proclamation. And like proclamations, I don't think it was a proclamation. It was just these elected officials in Maryville were just expressing what their people, you know, those Hoosiers, telling them we don't want a nice facility, but they're not going to stand in the way if one happens to come there, and it happens to be that there's not going to be one there anyway. So Rokita, again, trying to find an excuse to get himself wedged in there to say, I'm standing against this, and he can go out there and something that Braun can't do, where I'm standing, you know, against, you know, these radical communists that are running these cities.
Is certainly always very good at garnering attention. He is a shameless attention whore. He's very good at it, and you know, keeps himself in the news because he's always running for the next thing. Somebody like DeWine, to your point, who's not running for re-election. These guys always seem to find a conscience after they're not running for anything anymore. Very much like Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, standing up to Trump a couple weeks ago after he lost his primary. Tom Tillis, same thing. That, yeah, you know, no conscience when it matters, right? Only when the stakes are really low for them personally and they've got nothing to lose. Let's stay on this thread a little bit. And you know, we talk about immigration here, and one of the main facilities in the Midwest where immigrants are being detained is at the Miami Correctional Facility, which houses more than 600 detainees alongside roughly 1,800 state prisoners. Well, this week, the warden at Miami, Brian English, announced his resignation. As I said, it's one of the Midwest's largest immigrant detention centers. 2 detainees have died there, prompting calls for investigation from Representative Andre Carson and others. Problems documented by Indy Star before and during English's tenure include rampant violence, drug use, inadequate medical care, inconsistent food service, and hygiene difficulties. And while state officials promised the ICE arrangement would be profitable, delayed federal payments have so far left expenditures exceeding revenue. And staying on the incarceration thread, this one from the Indiana Capital Chronicle, the new Westville Correctional Facility being built up in LaPorte County is being equipped with the capability to perform executions by firing squad. Even though state law only currently authorizes lethal injection, the state currently has 0 execution drugs on hand, exhausting its supply after killing a man last October. Legislation introduced by State Representative Jim Lucas to legalize the firing squad narrowly failed last year, and the Trump administration is pushing the authorization, saying it is a practical constraint on executions at the federal penitentiary in Terre Haute there. Katie, you know, I guess I want to focus on that right now. They're building a new prison at Westville to replace the current Westville Correctional Facility and the Michigan City State Prison up there. But two of these max facilities up in LaPorte County, that's where I'm originally from. We do incarceration up there. But we're building this new facility equipped for firing squad, which we don't even use. Currently use lethal injection, but it costs like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to execute a prisoner between the appeals and then all these the drugs, which you can't find anymore because they're used contraindicated to what they're made for, so no one will actually sell them to us. The real question is, why are we doing any of this? It's 2026. This is inhumane. We shouldn't be doing the death penalty at all. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, because I'm in the same boat. I have a hard time with anybody who is pro capital punishment, pro death penalty, and then they also say I'm pro life. Like, that's still life that you are willingly, you're like, okay, you did it. And then you go, and it's such an exhaustive process too. Like you said, like the appeals and all of the other stuff, can't get beds, can't do this. Why even do it? Why even do it? It is no different than putting someone in prison for life without parole. Like, absolutely no different, other than the fact that you're not killing them. And going through all of this, and also, I just have a hard time with any sort of death penalty, no matter what it is, because I'm a nurse. I miss veins all the time trying to put an IV in, and they don't have medical professionals doing that stuff. It is their prison staff doing it. And so it's not even, there was someone who had gotten, I don't know if it was in Indiana or if it was somewhere else, but they had to get multiple pokes to try and get an IV in them to give them the medications, and even like put it in their jugular, and still couldn't get it. Like, and he just laid there just waiting. And it's so inhumane. No matter which way you slice it, it's inhumane, and it's not pro-life. So they're all hypocrites.
And then to your point, that whole pro-life thing, the branding, they stole that from Catholics who were against the death penalty. That is where pro-life came from. And then they wound up, extending that on to the whole abortion thing. And then that has just become, they've lifted that branding entirely. But these people, David, they're not pro-life. They're pro-punishment. They're pro-death. They're certainly nothing in the realm of pro-life.
Absolutely correct. I'm, against the death penalty. It's something that, we know convictions take place for that eyewitness accounts are inaccurate. Convictions take place that are racially motivated. Our whole criminal justice system is racially motivated. And capital punishment costs a lot of money, like I said, with the appeal process versus putting someone and sentencing them to life to stay behind bars. It's a lot cheaper, but it's irreversible. It's costly, as I've said, and it's inherently flawed. And I think it violates the Eighth Amendment rights of cruel and unusual punishment. I think the Supreme Court has gotten this wrong when it's been decided. Local jurisdiction. It's unfortunate that it's still the law of the land in many states like Indiana, and the Supreme Court allows states to make those decisions. And I'm ashamed that our government, this is one of the things they get wrong, and I think it should be reversed, and we shouldn't have capital punishment. Nonetheless, firing squads just because it's the easiest route to getting to that act of revenge, which is what the death penalty is. It's to make people feel good temporarily that they're sentencing somebody, and the eye for an eye thing. I mean, I'm not a biblical person, but I'm sorry, but our Constitution is not based on the Bible like some people think. It's based on a rational rule of law that should be applied equally to everyone.
Yeah, speaking of the clear intent and language of the Constitution still being up for debate, apparently, let's talk about our Supreme Court a little bit. And we've got a ton of big news on the Supreme Court this week. They're releasing decisions on the cases that they heard in this last session. So we got a ton released last week and this. And I guess I want to start with the big one. And, we were talking about immigration, of course, and this is a major concern for all the white nationalists populating the Trump administration. And to that effect, the president issued an executive order last year to end birthright citizenship. He can't do that. And this week, as the Supreme Court issued the series of consequential rulings on cases from this past session, the nation's highest court reaffirmed what we all knew. The 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to all persons born on U.S. soil, though it's worth noting that what should have been a 9-0 slam dunk of a case based on the plain language of the Constitution was only narrowly decided by this corrupted court. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the majority, with Amy Coney Barrett joining him in siding with the liberals. Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch dissented, with Kavanaugh sort of in the middle. He sided with the majority, but offered a potential roadmap for Congress to legislate exceptions to this constitutional right. Lots of other cases on the docket, but let's start with this one. And Katie, I guess I'm going to start with you here. So, I mean, this case should have been a slam dunk 9-0 decision. To David's point, he, talking about how the freedom of religion and this most definitely not being a Christian nation, very clearly written in the First Amendment to the Constitution. Well, very clearly in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, it says that birthright citizenship is a thing. I don't know how these conservative justices twisted themselves into knots to vote against this thing. They're clearly just making stuff up as they go along. I'm going to let you two talk about this case specifically. I'm going to take about 2 minutes, run to the restroom, and I will be right back. But you two, Birthright Citizenship, go off. I'll be back.
My mic's muted.
Okay, there we go.
Oh.
Now we're unmuted.
I was like, my mic's muted. I am not surprised that the justices who dissented, they will do anything to do Trump's bidding. Like they'll do all types of gymnastics to do his bidding and to do what he wants, because they're also sycophants. Like they will literally bow down and do whatever he wants them to do. And they knew he didn't want birthright citizenship, so they are having to literally like convolute themselves to turn it down. And it should have been a 9-0 decision. It's as clear as day. It's literally the first section of the 14th Amendment. So I'm not surprised. Disappointed, but not surprised.
Right. And I think in describing the Supreme Court, instead of calling them, liberal, moderate, conservative, it should be unimaginative is the conservative ones, because they just copy and paste from the legal briefs from the Trump administration into their dissent in this particular case. Talking about birth tourism, which, I don't know if that really exists, where people actually plan their vacations around the birth of a child and come to Hawaii or come here to New York so they can, give birth here so that their child can claim now that they can be a citizen of this nation from wherever nation they come back. And then they fly back and then this person has citizenship here. I don't know if that's a real thing or not.
I have a hard time believing anybody would want to come to a country without universal health care just to have a baby.
Well, yeah, they definitely.
I just don't.
Yeah,
I have a very
exactly.
hard time imagining that. And so to me, it's like they just are doing anything to just be racist. That's
to your
best way to
point.
say it.
David, this birth tourism, it's not a thing. Like it does not exist.
Yes.
There may be the occasional fringe case where this happens, but we're talking like maybe a handful of people out of millions of children born every year. And to Katie's point, I don't know, man. Like coming here to birth a U.S. citizen seems like jumping on the Titanic right now.
Yeah, I can't even like square that circle. I just don't understand why anybody would be like, yeah, let's go to America and have our baby, and then we'll be stuck with a $100,000 hospital bill.
And these conservative, they're
out of network when they give birth here, because I would think with universal health care in Canada and Europe and etc., their networks don't extend down here to IU Methodist.
Yeah,
and they're using this as the pretext for like the most horrible, racist, eugenic stuff you can imagine. They're talking about this fake birth tourism thing as an excuse to, like, I don't know, prevent pregnant women from entering the country, or to screen for pregnancies, like invasive things to let women in the country. And then we've got some right-wing hacks talking about sterilizing people. I don't know. That seems particularly Nazi-esque. These people are ghouls. Stephen Miller is like the head ghoul. So fortunately, I guess we've got the Supreme Court at least making the right decision for now. But J.D. Vance went out this week and said, hey, we're only one justice away. So that very, very scary stuff there. Like, your Sonia Sotomayor taking a bad bite of a ham sandwich away from birthright citizenship going away.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I was reading not only the SCOTUS blog about this topic, and then I actually, because this one statement that jumped out at me that I didn't quite understand from the dissent from Samuel Alito, where he argues that he contended the 14th Amendment confers citizenship on only those children who, at birth, owe allegiance solely to this country. How many children, what child is coming out of, I mean, you're a nurse that comes out and says immediately, I am a U.S. citizen, or and says the Pledge of Allegiance. What baby is doing? I don't understand how he could write that. So I went to the actual brief of his dissent, and yes, this was not taken out of context. He actually says that. But what baby is declaring that, okay, I'm really, I'm declaring to the Mexican, but because I'm born in Texas, I guess I get to be a Mexican, and I don't understand how babies can declare allegiance once they're born.
They're just twisting themselves in knots to get to they start from the decision they want to reach and work backwards from there. So I guess we're just past the hour mark here. So I guess I want to take 45 seconds and hear one more time from our friends down in Salem at Crossroads Commons. They're holding a fundraiser. Only about a week or less than a week left on that. So give them a hand here before they meet their deadline. I will see you folks in 45 seconds. I think.
The Crossroads Commons in Salem, Indiana, headquartered in a historic Salem home, is holding a fundraiser to expand via the purchase of the 3/4-acre lot of land adjacent to their facility. Please consider donating or spread the word so that they can further expand their services to the community. Scan the QR code on your screen for a direct link to the donation page and help us buy the grass.
All right, so only a couple days there. They could use a hand, a very important project for our folks down there in Washington County. So I want to stay on the Supreme Court because, like I said, there were a lot of big decisions came out of them, out of the court this week. So in addition to the positive ruling on the Birthright citizenship case, a couple other positive rulings this week. In a 6-3 decision, the court ruled that police use of a geofence warrant counts as a Fourth Amendment search. Justice Kagan wrote in the majority in that case, rejecting the government's argument that voluntarily letting Google collect location data forfeits any privacy interest. The Supremes also maintained the independence of the Federal Reserve, narrowly ruling 5-4 to prevent President Trump from firing Fed Governor Lisa Cook. However, the Fed appears to be the only agency spared from Trump's wrath, as the court ruled 6-3 in a different case to overturn the 91-year-old Humphrey's executor law, giving the president sweeping new authority over roughly 24 previously independent agencies, including the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Merit Systems Protection Board, and many others. So I guess that 6-4 or 6-3 ruling on the geofence warrant is important because that's a big privacy thing. And David, I'm going to go work backwards here and start here with you. That is in terms of the Fourth Amendment search, it's saying if you go somewhere where there are a large group present and the government wants to basically collect the data on everybody in that area using one of these geofence warrants, they can't do that.
Right. That is a good decision, even though really they're just kicking this back to the lower courts, as I was reading in the blog, to be decided whether or not it was a reasonable search. But it's a good thing that they're saying, okay, they can't just automatically use this new technology, which of course legislators should be legislating on this first before it gets to a Supreme Court, but we know legislatures on the state level and federal level move so slow at even understanding technology. Nonetheless, actually being able to write proper proper laws that are protecting individuals from illegal searches, which is what the Supreme Court amazingly were able to do here in this decision. They talk about having a good faith. I mean, this is what the Supreme Court's supposed to be doing, these type of decisions. I still can't believe it's a 6-3, like with the Birthright Citizenship. What three justices don't want to protect the Bill of Rights, which is what the Bill of Rights is about, individual protections. And there's so many laws like the Fourth Amendment, so many constitutional laws like the Fourth Amendment.
Small government conservatives,
privacy.
right?
Right, exactly. Allegedly, they're small government. Government should not be intruding in our private spaces. And that's exactly what this ruling said. So, yes, that's a surprising, I think, a surprising ruling, but it could be back, because if the lower courts here decide wrong, again, people can appeal up back to the Supreme Court, and maybe they'll take another bite at this apple with a future decision that could go the other way, because this may just be based on the procedures and the decision-making process of that lower court is what they're really saying was not right, where it could come back and say, no, government does have the right to search everybody who's in that geofence, even though that geofence, that electronic, whatever, was within a mile of that, and let's take these people out and prosecute them.
Yeah. Sounds like not set in stone then, this decision. What also, not set in stone, apparently a 91-year-old law that has been faithfully adhered to for, 4+ generations now. You'd think something like that would be pretty well set in stone, but, here, Katie, they overturned this Humphrey's executor law, allowing the president to fire the members of the boards on these nominally independent agencies. Independent doesn't seem to mean what we think it means, does it?
No, it doesn't. So I have a hard time with this because they ruled that Trump couldn't fire the Fed governor, but then turn around and do this and overturn Humphrey's executor. And I'm just like, don't you see the hypocrisy in that? Like, don't you understand that you're literally saying you can't do this in one agency, but you can do it in all these other ones, and it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I think it comes down to this: the Supreme Court, they're going to be aligned with Trump, at least the Supreme Court, most of the time. But if his decisions threaten money, threaten capital, then they're going to backstop capital at every point here. And I think what they're doing in keeping the Fed independent is making sure he can't F up the economy too badly.
Monetary policy, playing devil's advocate here, this is how they probably were able to rationalize it. Monetary economic policy is the one little independent agency that he should not be able to manipulate. It's fine. These were the anti-independent ruling right here in the week of Independence Day. Let's take away and throw all the other independent agencies in the Potomac, as I've already brought up that before. But monetary policy, our economy, we can't let that be manipulated. So that's how they rationalized it, I think, in deciding, okay, everything else can be politics. And of course, their argument is it's been politically done in the past. I mean, even, they've allowed him to manipulate the Department of Justice. I would think that would have been where the lines were drawn, but obviously not. Only monetary policy.
There is no line for some of them. It kills me. Like, that's where I'm at. I'm like, it is so just hypocritical to me that I'm just like, but I'm not a Supreme Court justice. I don't know all the laws like they do. So
I think you would look great in a black robe.
Thank you.
They are not the impartial priest class that we like to pretend they are. These folks are political operators making political decisions, just in robes.
Yeah.
So just
And
a
you
couple
can't
more
say that.
cases from the Supreme Court that I did want to mention this week. Justices ruling unanimously that states can exclude transgender athletes from girls and women's sports teams. Brett Kavanaugh writing the majority decision in this case that when Title IX was enacted in the 70s, sex meant biological sex, and separate teams based on biological sex are expressly permitted under the law. Now, the liberal justices did separate from the majority on the specific case of one West Virginia teen, a 15-year-old who has never gone through male puberty, questioning whether she was actually, quote, similarly situated to cisgender boys, arguing that the court skipped necessary fact-finding before ruling against her constitutional claim. This ruling comes a year after the court's 6-3 decision upholding Tennessee's ban on puberty blockers and hormone therapy for transgender minors, very much cementing a clear pattern in the court's approach to transgender rights cases. David, I wanted to hear from you on this one.
It's a heartbreaking case, the way legal briefs now reflect the words biological males, biological females, when again, I'm going to go back to the flat earther syndrome. Yes, old science used to have a binary of sex, male, female only. But with new science, with new understanding of what sex is, it's a spectrum. It is not 100% one, 100% the other. It's a spectrum. There are no biological males. I have characteristics that are more dominant that are male, versus there are still characteristics inside me that are female. Whether it's hormones, whether it's organs, but when a child is born, that's what this ruling says. When a child is born and they just declare, oh, on the outside, because this child has these particular sex organs, they are biologically male or biologically female. They're saying that they're trying to ingrain in that now in a decision by the Supreme Court that person must live how that child was born based on their outward appearances of that characteristic, when it's only one of many characteristics that makes a child a person, male or female. And of course, as they get older, their identity may shift because the characteristics, the internal characteristics inside that person may be that they may show that they're male, but they're really female. That's when they can transition into a transgender female. And so it's heartbreaking because the state legislature, bringing it back home here, last year there was trying to put a law on the books defining, again, this flat earther science that there's only two sexes, male and female, biologically male, biologically female. And I feel that because of this decision, I accidentally muted myself. States like Indiana and other states are going to try to pass these laws. These extremists will pass these laws that define it, which will again make transgender individuals invisible in state government, be able to allow for discrimination, like this case is going to allow for discrimination against kids that are transgender in playing sports and participating with their classmates in what is a rite of passage for every child. If they want to play a team sport or even an individual sport, they should be allowed to do that. They shouldn't be excluded just because they present themselves different from what they may appear. It's hard. This decision is heartbreaking. Being a pansexual queer man, I will always be a voice for transgender youth, transgender folks in the state of Indiana and around our country, around the world for that matter, that they need those voices because sometimes they can't be openly who they are because of decisions like this by this body.
And I think the there's the court in this decision does offer a way out. I mean, you mentioned the sort of the flat Earth way of thinking, and science has come to know a lot more about the way these things work in the last 50 years since Title IX went into effect. The law will have to be updated because the plain text of the law in that case does definitely, it goes based on the gender binary. That is old science now. At the time, I guess we didn't know everything. So with an updated law, maybe we can expand these protections to reflect the actual science as it stands now. I did want to talk about one last Supreme Court case before we move on. Like I said, big packed, dense topic this week with all these decisions coming in. But with all of those cases we talked about getting this attention, one that largely slipped under the radar might be the most consequential, and it's the court striking down 6-3 the federal law limiting coordinated spending between political parties and their candidates, overruling a 2001 precedent and allowing parties to spend unlimited amounts in coordination with candidates. This is Kavanaugh again writing for the majority, holding that the only valid rationale for campaign finance limits is preventing quid pro quo corruption, and existing contribution limits plus disclosure laws already do that. The coordinated expenditure limits are an unnecessary speech restriction. Elena Kagan writing in dissent that this practice, the practical consequences of this are that a donor who can theoretically only give $7,000 directly to a candidate can now give the party up to $500,000 earmarked for that candidate's bills, circumventing the law that it was designed to prevent. Now, of course, this ruling does apply equally to Democrats and Republicans on paper, but the original challengers were Republican committees. J.D. Vance was party to the suit, and the Trump administration sided with them. The practical effects favor whichever party has the wealthier donor networks. We all know who that is. Katie, your thoughts before we move on to the next topic.
Money in politics is just an entire cancer to society. I think it affects everything. And if I can bring every issue back to money in politics half the time, because you have the lobbyists, you have the people, the corporations who buy out politicians. And then this is no different. It's just circumventing the contribution limits that they have to the candidate, but they can give it to the party and say, this is for this, and this is for this person. And it's just, it's a cancer to society. Money in politics is a cancer to society.
100%. It is, people talk about, we shouldn't have litmus tests in politics. And generally I don't. I'm a big fan of nuance and, we can agree to disagree on things. Not corruption. Yeah. Corruption is my one litmus test, and big money in politics is corruption. We have to root it out. So let's move on. Of course, we were talking about the David, yes, real quick.
Yeah, just real quick. Like our immigration system, like our criminal justice system, like our healthcare system, our campaign finance laws need to be thrown into the Potomac and started over again. In fact, one of the planks for Equality Indiana, one of our legislative initiatives, is a policy initiative called Clean Elections and Public Financing, which provides public grants to candidates who limit private fundraising. And it matters because it reduces special interest influence and elevates everyday Hoosier voices with public financing versus private fundraising. So it's important that I think we need to, on a federal level and local level, get rid of our campaign finance rules and go to more public finance. So everybody gets the same amount of money. Your ideas are what you have to compete with to win an election, not the amount of money you raise.
And we've seen the kind of positive effects this can have in places like New York City, where they do matching funding, and you get progressive candidates like Zohran Mamdani that can emerge from situations like that when people actually get to pick what they want instead of donors getting to pick what they want. So let's stay on the election front, and there were some this week. Before we talk about this week's election, I want to talk about the 2020 election, which the president still won't shut up about. The FBI is surging 260 intelligence analysts from field offices nationwide into what Director Kash Patel has designated a priority investigation into the 2020 Georgia election, with overtime authorized, including weekends and holidays, and analysts expected to complete 708 records checks each by July 17th. This investigation traces back to a January FBI raid that seized over 600 boxes of Fulton County election records, ballots, ballot images, voter rolls, tabulation materials, all of this based on warrants that a federal judge later criticized as relying on misleading and troubling justifications, largely sourced from claims previously debunked by Republican-led investigations in Georgia. And despite the president's ongoing fixation with an election he lost 6 years ago, there is an important midterm election this year with primaries ongoing. This week, Colorado held its primary election with the progressive left continuing its recent winning streak. Democratic Socialist Malat Quiros defeated a 30-year incumbent Representative Diana DeGette by double digits. DeGette has been in office since before Quiros was born. And Attorney General Phil Weiser also beating sitting U.S. Senator Michael Bennet for the open governor's seat, not on ideology necessarily. They largely align, but on anti-Trump positioning. Weiser hammered Bennet for confirming several Trump cabinet nominees. And then also Senator John Hickenlooper did survive his primary against progressive challenger Julie Gonzalez, but she got more than 45% of the vote, an unusually strong showing against an incumbent senator. Katie, progressives, we're having a moment. We saw it in New York a couple weeks ago. Was that last week? I don't know. What is time? But all these DSA-aligned candidates winning there. The establishment flipped their lid. We're seeing more progressives win in Colorado now. It's not just the coasts, is it?
You're fine. It is not just the coast. I was so excited to watch these results come in because I've been following them pretty closely just to see, because sometimes, you just need a little hope, a little hopium. And I've been following them, and I was so excited to see how well they did, how well they won in their primaries. Claire Valdez, literally, I think she won like by double digits. And I think Darlisa hers was a little bit closer, but she had so much attack ads coming out that right before that, and she was in such like a heavy Hispanic district, I think. And she ran against Espaillat, who is the leader of the Hispanic caucus. So to me, I'm like, but at the end of the day, what comes down to it is the fact that they had a message, they stuck on their message. And instead of going out and just saying, Trump's bad, we hate Trump, they went out and they actually brought their ideas. They said, this is how we're going to fix it. And this is what we want to do. We want to abolish ICE. We want to pass Medicare for all. And we want to free Palestine, or, or cut off aid to Israel, or whatever they went, but they stuck to it. And that is something that I personally can applaud in any candidate. It's all I want is a politician to believe what they want to believe and stand 10 toes on it. Like, don't switch it up. I want them to stay on message with what they're going to say and how they're going to deliver. And if they don't, to me, it's pointless. And I think that is why we saw such big, overwhelming victories in New York and in Colorado, because they stuck to their message. They stuck on their message and they said, this is how we're going to fix it. This is what we want to do. And it's not just a New York thing. I think it's something that is, people are hungry for change. People are hungry for community. And these campaigns brought that. Like, you would see videos of them canvassing in New York, and you have like over 2,000-3,000 people that are canvassing together just in one group. That and people want that. People want that everywhere. And so I think that is something that we will continue to see as the general gets closer, are these more progressive left candidates.
I think so. And I could stick on this a little bit, but I want to kind of hurry up and make sure we get a chance to talk about our last couple stories here. But I did want one more election note in Indiana. Independent Lincoln Party candidate for Secretary of State Greg Ballard secured a spot on November's ballot. He turned in over 70,000 signatures, with at least 40,000 now verified, easily clearing the signature threshold. If Ballard gets at least 2% of the vote in November, future independents can run under the Lincoln Party banner, giving this campaign stakes well beyond this single race. A poll of 400 voters by Independent Indiana earlier this year did show Ballard competitive in this race at 23%. He faces Republican Max Engling, Democrat Bo Bai, and Libertarian Lori Schillings in November. David, does Ballard have a real shot in that race?
Well, 20,000 of those signatures came from me. Not that I support him, but I like to screw with people's numbers. So there are people, certain voices in the Republican Party. I'm not going to say their name too loud. Abdul Siraj, he likes to think he sees all those signatures that's really support. But when you got people like me who understand the process, that your signature on those ballots are just saying it's okay for him to get a ballot position, and I'm in favor of that, regardless of their political values and whether or not they agree with me or not. In fact, I had to counsel a person at a Pride festival down in Greenwood because they had people waiting outside as people were showing up and asking for signatures. And a lady came up to me and goes, "Oh, there was somebody out there asking for signatures for so-and-so to get on the ballot. Am I committed to voting?" I said, no. That's just for ballot access. The people asking for those signatures need to be clearer with that as to what exactly you're doing. You are a citizen who's registered to vote. You're going to give approval for somebody to get on the ballot. I would never vote for Ballard running for a dog catcher. I mean, not that I disliked him when he was mayor, but he and my values and his don't align. Some of them do, yes, but not enough for me to say I would vote for him, and I won't vote for him for Secretary of State. I'm glad if he gets on the ballot because he does have a particular vision and voice that he can add to it, and he can possibly help the Democrats take control of that statewide office. Of course, that's going to result in the legislature wanting to make that an appointed position, but that's another conversation for another day.
Well, they can't do that. That'll require a constitutional amendment. But
they're going to try to do that. But so yeah, I think it's a good thing because it's a different point of view for that office, and hopefully a more moderate point of view than the extremists that are running to want to completely upend our current voting system and our primary system and everything else that the extremist Mr. Max is trying to do.
Yeah, and whether you would vote for the guy or not, you want to see choices, I think, as a voter, and I think anything that sort of breaks up the two-party monopoly on our voting system is a positive development. I'm actually going to have Mayor Ballard on the podcast here not this coming week, but the following week. So we're gonna hear what he has to say, regardless, and interested to have that conversation.
Some questions. I may have to send you some questions to ask him.
Please do. I'm interested to have those. So let's move on and talk about our next story here. And of course, we talked about the elections and the corrupting effects of big money in politics, and we've got a whole series of stories just sort of highlighting how corrupt the Trump administration is this week. He took his first flight on the new Air Force One. Of course, this was a $400 million jet gifted to him by the government of Qatar, which also took another $400 million worth of taxpayer funding to upgrade the thing and make it usable as Air Force One. In addition to planes, he's also getting lavishly encrusted diamond rings. Belgium's Antwerp World Diamond Center gifting Trump a ring encrusted with 321 diamonds, 56 sapphires, 13 emeralds, and 6 rubies, estimated at between $25,000 and $35,000. This, of course, months after winning 0% U.S. tariff status on more than $2 billion in annual diamond exports. And then we've got this USA 250 thing going on in the Capitol this year, to coincide with the country's 250th birthday. You've got this big state fair thing on the lawn. Well, corporate donors to this Freedom 250 semi-private organization created by the Trump administration to replace the bipartisan America 250 committee, which had been set up like a decade ago to get ready for the nation's 250th birthday. Well, corporate donors to Freedom 250 included companies with active lobbying campaigns before the administration, including Palantir, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, United Airlines, and Scott's Miracle-Gro, whose glyphosate product Trump signed an executive order boosting after the company donated. All this happening the same week we learned that Trump became over $2 billion richer since taking over the presidency the second time. His financial disclosures from 2025 showing over $1.4 billion in income from crypto and digital tokens alone. That doubled, more than doubled his $600 million 2024 income just in crypto. He also received $86.5 million from financial settlements, from lawsuits with Twitter, ABC, CBS, YouTube, and Meta. His resort income grew at Mar-a-Lago and Doral. In contrast, Vice President J.D. Vance's disclosures ran only 17 pages, and his biggest income bump was royalties from his previous book, Hillbilly Elegy. All of this corruption coming just a week after Vance himself said Watergate would only be a 12-hour news story anymore, and it wouldn't be cause for the end of a presidency. And Katie, I mean, in one regard, he's right. I mean, yes, this Watergate was serious and did cause and should have caused the end of Nixon's presidency, but that level of corruption is so commonplace under the Trump administration. It really is. It would just be another blip on the radar anymore.
If that, because sometimes there's so much that they do that doesn't even get covered in mainstream news. And then it's like, you'll look at it and you'll see it and you're like, whoa, I don't see this on. And I get on the news and they're airing a whole segment about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And I'm like, you guys, like there are problems going on right now. And I mean, it's so on par for Trump. It's a grift. It's always been a grift for him. He's a con man. He's always been a con man. And I just am not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. But the thing is, they commit like a Watergate at least twice a day. And that is like that's barely scratching the surface, some of the stuff that they do. So to me, it's not surprising that JD Vance says, like, he's not wrong. He is not wrong. It would not be a blip on the news cycle.
Well, there are definitely break-ins going on. Right. That's absolutely why it works. If they do so many of them that they all cannot be covered, flood the zone. They talked about doing that in this new term, which they have done. And if they break laws in multiple laws at a time, there's no way the mainstream media can cover it. And if they do, they're just called liars anyway. They're playing for the other team, because the people who they now invite to the White House briefings, the right-wing media bubble, they report. They're not going to report. They're not going to ask questions about the break-in down at the 7-Eleven in Washington, D.C. that was by J.D. Vance, where he walked in and grabbed a bunch of hillbilly stuff and ran out. I'm sorry, I shouldn't make fun of hillbillies. my family hails from Kentucky, so I can, I guess, make fun of hillbillies because we hail from hillbillies. But the point is, the thing that brought down the Nixon administration was not necessarily the break-in, but it was the cover-up that took place, because it was trying to cover up all the other corruption that was taking place. And again, all the other corruption that's going on about accepting jewels from a country, accepting a plane from a country. Shouldn't we go back, rewind this about an hour when Alito was talking about only when there's a quid pro quo should our election laws apply? Well, there's the spotlight on the quid pro quo of Trump receiving these gifts because of zero tariffs. Okay, you're okay. Of doing this with their country, blah, blah, everything that he tried to do in the first administration got called out because there was a quid pro quo. And this administration, because he has sycophants everywhere, nobody's calling any of it out. And they fired all the watchdogs in all of the agencies that are supposed to snuff out corruption. And they've repurposed, wherever you heard this before, repurposed their salaries for, other people in other agencies. We heard that here in Indiana before. We rewind this conversation an hour and a half ago happening here in Indiana. So, yeah, it's, again, there's so much corruption going on right now, and it's so blatant. And again, the legislature, which is our sycophants for Trump as well, they're doing absolutely nothing about it. And back in the Nixon days, you had a legislature that actually had a backbone, and it was when they saw that there was enough corruption that even the Supreme Court said you had to turn over the tapes, and Congress said yes, there are the votes to impeach you. You have to resign. He did. Well, the Supreme Court isn't going to tell Trump to turn over anything. And this legislature is not going to even think about impeaching him, because if they do, he's going to run people against them, and they know it.
It's legalized corruption. That's what we've got
Absolutely
going on in this country. The Supreme Court, we talked about it with the campaign finance rules just a little bit ago. That's essentially legalizing the buying of elections. A couple years ago, this very Supreme Court, in a case that I believe originated here in Indiana, up in the city of Portage, essentially legalized gift giving like this because, well, it's not an exquisite quid pro quo, it's a tip. David, this airplane isn't a quid pro quo, it's a gratuity. This diamond ring isn't bribery, it's a tip. It is a thank you gift.
And of course, Trump brags about not taxing tips anymore. So, ba-bam!
See, yeah, look, that's what it all comes down to, right? And it's not corruption if it's legal, and they're essentially rewriting the rules so that all of this stuff, we know it's wrong, but by the letter of the law, well, it's okay. And you know what? I think this is a good place to enter back to our theme for the day, right? It's America's 250th, and I guess I want to spend the rest of our time talking about really how far have we come. Have we? Because if you look at, and I've got a series of stories linked, we're not going to be able to talk about them all in depth, but in our show notes, I think there's a lot of good takes on the USA 250th, many of which come from The Nation magazine, who had a great special this week with several essays from guest writers talking about their reflections on the 250th, and I sort of want us to reflect on it. But the entry point is the corruption, and I want to start by revisiting an article from last year in Mother Jones by David Korn and Tim Murphy, and they basically go through the 27 specific grievances listed against King George III by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. Where Jefferson labels George as a tyrant who had forfeited his right to rule by breaking his own laws. And this article maps the grievances listed by Jefferson against the Mad King directly onto behaviors committed by Trump in this administration. We've had a series of No Kings rallies in this last year. Katie, it's 250 years on. We shouldn't need to have them, but alas, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been it's like a cycle that has just basically kind of come back to where we are ruled by like a bad king, it feels like. I mean, no matter, he is able to do literally whatever he wants. The law be damned, people be damned, the government be damned. He can do whatever he wants because he has been allowed to do that. And that is because the quote unquote safeguards that were supposed to be in place to protect people, just people in general, and the law and everything, it didn't work. You know, we have sycophants in Congress who he should have never been able to run for president again, but he did because they never got off of the Trump train, and it's
Never. And
baffling. It is. It really is.
And that was, what's one of the grievances in the declaration that the king was, using Parliament to do things that were against English law at the time. And listen, Trump hasn't canceled elections or suspended Congress or deployed private mercenaries yet, but his term is young. But I guess beyond Trump, David, just let's think aside from him and everything that goes along with him. Just zoom out and look at the full scope of America at 250. Just how are you feeling as an American on this weekend when we really should be reflecting about such things?
The terms that are always tossed out, about freedom and liberty, some of those are ingrained in or are mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. But our rule of law, of course, didn't happen until the Constitution took place, which then gave us that roadmap of how our laws should be protective of individuals. So 250 years ago, they put forth the Declaration of Independence, which is, I talk about it like this, as, it was the divorce papers from the British crowns. The colonies and the colonists said that we're no longer subjects of a monarch across the ocean. We want to do this ourselves. And the divorce proceedings took place, which was the Revolutionary War. And it wasn't until the war ended that and we put forth Constitution. Well, first the Articles of Confederation, which didn't work, but then the Constitution, which was us being independent. The values that were put forth in the Declaration of Independence, we still struggle to live up to those values. I think Jefferson and the ones that the imperfect founding fathers that signed that document, and we know they were imperfect men. And of course, at that time, they put that document forward. It was only what was vogue for people to really have power, which were property owners, property owners that were white men. We know that's a vogue, and our Constitution was also outlined to be only for those individuals. Everyone else pretty much were subjects of those people in power, the white men who were property owners. And then eventually the Constitution grew to, allow, enfranchise women, enfranchise Black Americans, etc. With that document changing. But the Declaration of Independence, I guess, my thoughts about it. We're still trying to live up to all people being created equal. We're still trying to live up to that because. With our immigration system, and like I said, our criminal justice system that I mentioned before, they both need to be tossed out. Even our healthcare system, not everyone's treated equal in any of those institutions that manage those areas. There's still our government is unfairly picking and choosing winners and losers, and so I think. Again, I'm not a religious person, but having a come to Jesus meeting for the whole country to rethink how can we put those values of the Declaration of Independence back into our institutions and our laws in the Constitution. Of course, we have the 9 individuals in black robes that help call strikes and balls on our laws and how they're passed, whether they fit into those values. They're no longer looking at it through the lens of everyone. They are literally going back to the originalists of our Constitution, where maybe only white men who are property owners should be the ones that always get on base, where everyone else, if you can't hack it, you don't get on base, if I'm going to bring out the sports analogy there. So,
oh man, that's what they meant by originalists the whole time, wasn't it?
That's right. They want to, exactly. They want to go back to that mindset, unfortunately. So I don't know. I try to be positive. At the same time, I'm a big skeptic, and I think there's a lot of community and going back to the election conversation you and Katie just had, that establishment Democrats need to embrace this community that some of these social democrats are bringing to the table. They shouldn't feel threatened by that, and we're seeing that too often, like in Indiana, where the Democratic establishment party has been so frightened that, we had here in Marion County, the clerk, voiding individuals who were running to be precinct committee persons or to be delegates because of some obscure rule. They're not embracing this energy of community, and that's how I think Democrats are going to find it difficult on election night, because if they don't do that between now and November, when counting the ballots, there's going to be some individuals that won't get as many votes because they see the Democratic Party still, the establishment Democratic Party still not embracing the large tent. And our whole country needs to do that. Our whole country needs to do that. The Democrats need to set an example of embracing this change, and our whole country needs to do that. And I think liberals, progressives, and Democrats should set that example of bringing everyone to the table and giving them that equal voice instead of feeling threatened by new voices.
A lot there, and I'm going to sort of use it to set up Katie to give her final take on this. Just multitudes, right? Trump using lots of his big 4th of July speeches over the last couple nights to talk about how great America is and how we'll always be on top, and to call us social democrats, to David's point, he called us communists, right? When really, I think what folks like us progressives are trying to do, Katie, is to really take those founding words to their logical conclusion and actually embody those ideas that were put on paper, but lovely words written by not so lovely men at the time. Complicated is generous, to say the least, but it's always been, David mentioned the word struggle. It's very much been a struggle to fully put those founding ideals into practice, and it has always been this back and forth. And I think we've gotten to a habit in this country, especially maybe like during the Obama era, we thought it kind of seemed like it was inevitable. We talk about the long arc of history bending toward justice, and it makes it seem as if it bends by itself. And it has always been people doing the bending, folks like the abolitionist movement, like the women's suffrage movement, like the gay rights movement, and it has always been activists who've done that hard work on the ground, and it has been uneven and slow, and there have been setbacks, and I think we're in the midst of a very serious setback right now. Folks like Trump would call us criminals for even having this discussion. They would label us terrorists under their National Security Memo 7. Katie, I think I want to leave you with this. Like, America contains multitudes. It is all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's all of these things. It's all of the people. America is the way it is, and America is so great for these reasons. It's the people. It's the people. It's the differences. It's the diversity. It's the shared experience that we all bring to the table to that is what makes America America. Like he was talking about, David was talking about Ronald Reagan and how he, you know, the shiny. He said you can't go to France and become French. You can't go to China and become Chinese. You can't go to Japan and become Japanese. But you can come to America and become an American. And that is like so. It has just been so lost on so many people that is what literally makes us great. Are all of the difference in the diversity that we have with all of each other, and that is what has brought, you know, like the activists together over time. You know, it's the different experiences that all of them bring to the table that have been able to make those movements that they were doing work and to get the result that it needed to get eventually. And it's just, you know, my dad calls me a communist all the time. I'm used to it. So I'm like, whatever, I don't care. But when it's the president of the United States, and I literally am just like, I just want human rights. Like, I just want people to be treated like people. And it's all, something Martin Luther King Jr. said was, live up to what you said on paper. I want America to live up to the ideals that they said on paper. And that is what I want. And that is what I think a majority of people want. And they want America to be, you know, this land where you can come and if the president's doing something you don't like, you can go stand out there and protest all you want and not have to worry about going to jail. If you want to, you know, say whatever, you should be able to do that. And because during that time there was, you know, the House Committee on Communism, or like they had like some type of committee. And I'm sitting here, I've had people tell me that because of me, that needs to be brought back. And I'm like, I've had people tell me that on Facebook, and I'm like, go touch grass, please. Go touch grass. Because all I want is for human rights. I want people to be treated with dignity, respect, and decency. That's it. That's all I want. And it doesn't make me a communist. And if it does, I don't care. I don't care.
There is nothing more American than dissent. And
yes,
and
that is the most patriotic thing.
So listen, we gotta wrap up here, and Katie, you're running for office. I'm gonna have you back on Tuesday. We'll talk all about that then. But
Yes.
Until that time, how can the folks out there watching us today learn more about your campaign? Maybe help Indiana live up to its highest ideals.
Yes. So my campaign is on Facebook, Katie Robbins for Indiana. Robbins is 1B. I get asked that all the time. Robbins is 1B. Or the website, it's katierobbinsforindiana.com.
Very good. Looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday night.
Yes, I'm so excited.
David, how about you? Where can the folks find out more about you, more about Equality Indiana, more about Queer the Vote, your initiative to get folks more involved here going into November?
Absolutely. Well, as you can see behind me, the stars and stripes that I put forth are the rainbow-colored stripes, but still representative of the 13 colonies, and of course the stars that represent each state. I think it's entirely appropriate. But Equality Indiana, which is a statewide LGBTQ voter engagement advocacy organization, can be found at equalityindiana.org. I don't know if you could see that here on my sign, but our Queer the Vote Indiana, I don't know, is that showing up right or is it backwards?
That looks great. Yeah.
It looks good. Yeah.
Okay. You can join it at our number there, 317-645-9773. Text join to that number and you'll get into our Queer the Vote Indiana newsletter is kind of what we're calling it, but it's a movement of putting the excitement of pride into participating in our voting, election, and civic systems, so that we can bring back the power back to ordinary average Hoosiers, not just the LGBTQ community, but our allies, which are average Hoosiers from Michigan to Kentucky, all across our state, that do support. There's plenty of polling data that says they feel, not just marriage should be for everyone, but leave trans kids alone. That's not going to fix the affordability crisis. Let them have gender affirming care. That's not going to allow for everyone to have health care by taking away gender affirming care for kids. So Equality Indiana is our 501c3 organization. You can support us at equalityindiana.org with contributions because we are a charitable organization. We also have a 501c4, not a C3, but a C4, an advocacy organization called Equality Indiana Advocates. And Katie, you'll probably be getting an email from Equality Indiana Advocates, which will have our survey sent out to all the candidates running for state offices as well as congressional offices, asking them questions about LGBTQ issues and see if they support us. And we'll be sharing that with voters so they know where these candidates stand in the upcoming election.
Fantastic. Great work there out of Equality Indiana, and looking forward to talking with you again, hopefully before we get to November. Katie, the same. We're going to see you Tuesday. So, and of course, in addition to Katie and David, you can find me online on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Send me a DM with feedback or email me at scott@whosleft.us. We can't do any of this without you. Please support our work with a paid subscription at progressiveindiana.net, and follow the network on social media at the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Once again, thank you to Katie Robbins and G. David Caudill for joining us today. Donate and volunteer for your favorite candidate or nonprofit organization. Like, share, comment, and leave a review for us. Let's keep building a radically democratic Indiana together. Until next time, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers signing off from Bloomington. Love each other, Indiana.